Hello and welcome to this edition of Community Voices Uganda on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. I want to welcome you all to this conversation, and I'm very happy that you all joined in time, and we have to put things in order as regards this particular topic we have this morning. And before we get into the conversation, I will request to first talk to you briefly about your environment, where you are, what is happening, things that Ugandans might know about your particular environment before we get into the depth of the conversation. And I know most of your faces, and certainly most of you have seen me or interacted with me. I'm so happy to look at people I've seen before, and certainly we're going to have a very, very good engagement. I'll start with you, Mase Nambuya. Mase, greetings. Welcome to the conversation. Where are you and how is that environment? Oscar Amanya, greetings. Welcome to the conversation. How is your environment?
Greetings to you, Philip, and the entire team. The environment here is fine. I'm in Kamwenge, in Ramwanja refugee settlement, and the conversation here, the environment here is, of course, of panic from the recent announcements by the president of the US, especially in a community like this one, where a lot of programs and projects run because of such kind of funding and aid. We are a little bit in panic, but we are sure that the work will continue and we shall be able to serve our nation and serve the Africans that we have here.
Thank you, Oscar Amanya. And certainly I should mention to you that there is some good news from the United States of America. They've been able to overturn some of the decisions of President Trump, and funding to key sectors like refugee settlements and healthcare are going to continue in the meantime. So certainly your work is going to continue going on. Thank you and welcome to the conversation. And Mr. Stuart Mugabe, what an honor. Greetings, sir. How is your environment?
Thank you very much, Philip. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be hosted by you specifically, my former student, my son, and I can't take it for granted. I'm here in Nansana, Wakiso. Sometimes we call ourselves Kampala people, but we are. This is this is Nansana, and the environment is very cool. Of course, as a parent, all parents are on now. We are now on our toes, planning to take back students to school, our learners to school, and people are running up and down. That's the time when we are getting loans. People are running for this and that, and we are there, running for vacancies, running for other items and everything. So Kampala is very, very busy with back to school activities, and I'm glad to be hosted by you, Philip, and the team. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Mr. Mugabe, and we're also very, very humbled and honored to have you today. And certainly we're going to have more of that conversation about going back to school and what it means for the parents, for the schools, for the nation, and so on. But it's good to have you now, colleagues. We are here to talk about a matter so critical to individuals, to pupils, but to the country at large. And this is education. And we have a background of the President of the Republic of Uganda coming out to issue an order to all UPE and USE schools to stop having boarding section in those particular schools. And we want to assess what this means for the learners, what it means for the parents, what it means for the schools themselves, but also for the country, because this is a decision that affects all those particular levels of stakeholding in the institutions. And if we don't talk about these things and certainly make recommendations, then certainly we leave everything in space to be swayed away by the winds. And I want us to start here, and I'll start with you, Mr. Mugabe. Look, before we get into the directive, if you met a foreigner and they ask you about the education system in Uganda, in brief, a few paragraphs, how would you define the education system in Uganda to that particular person?
I don't know whether you need, thank you very much, Philip, whether you need a definition of education, but in our own context of Uganda, really our educational system is for the survival for the fittest. You can only take your child to a school you can manage. So there is no yardstick the government is even using. You go to a school you can manage, and if you can't manage it, then you leave it. So education is not a social need in Uganda. It is for those who can manage it. In some countries, you are going to find it is an obligation of the government to provide education, and every child must go to a particular school or must obtain education. But in Uganda, we even don't call them dropouts. They are children who are born and don't go to any formal education, and they are basically they feed from informal education. After growing, then they begin doing all sorts of things. They don't formally go to school. So they can't write, they can't read. Basically, it is a choice. Our educational system in Uganda is a choice for those who can manage it. And if you can't manage it, even the quality of education, if we talk about quality of education, you go to a school, because people go to schools with various reasons. So I know why I'm going to Gayaza High School. I know why I'm going to King's College of Udo. I know why I should take my child to this particular nearby school of mine. So it is a matter of choice, whether you manage, whether you can, if you can manage that school, if you can be accommodated there, that's it. It's really, so I can call it survival for the fittest. Thank you very much, Philip.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mugabe. Survival for the fittest. That's such a huge statement to use on our education system, and certainly many people will agree with you because that is the reality on the ground. I want to come to you, Mase. Mase, talk to me. When Mr. Mugabe says education is basically survival for the fittest in this country, take me to your particular location. You interact with parents, you interact with teachers and many people. And we're in the season of going back to school. How are the parents in your particular locality preparing for taking back their children to school? And in any case, are they ready? Yes, Mercy.
All right. So according to Mr. Stuart, the way he has said that in Uganda, education system is survival for the fittest. Yeah, he's right according to his location. Similarly, here in Manafwa district, where I am from, parents are able to take their children to the schools where they afford. For example, according to your pocket, a parent who can manage a UZ school will take to that UZ school. The one who can manage a private school, which is paying about, can take there. So it also depends on whatever they have in pocket. Similarly, even these UZ schools, I'm talking about secondary most. These UZ schools also, we have some with different PTA. You can find a school is paying PTA of around 200. You have also another school which is paying PTA of 30,000. So a parent who cannot manage to take the child to PTA of 200, take the child to the PTA of 30,000. Then there is this parent who will say, me, I want my child to go to a school like which pays some good money, a private school, maybe for close attention and other things. So the parent will weigh him or herself and take the child to that particular school. Just like in biology, we say that the survival for the fittest, the species which and are unable to adapt to the conditions are wiped off. So that is it. So wherever you fit, you go there. Whatever level you are, whatever you're able to afford, you take the child there. So according to Mr. Scratch, he's very right. Survival for the fittest, go where you fit, and yeah. Thank you. That is all I have.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for that submission. I want to come to you, Amanya. You are a teacher. Talk to me about your school and indeed many other schools. How do they prepare for the go back to school season? And indeed, when you look at your school and the schools in your neighborhood, are they ready for this season?
Thank you so much, Philip, for bringing me in this conversation and for that wonderful question. When it comes to preparations as schools, I want to say that most of the schools in Uganda right now are ready to open up schools for students for this academic year of 2025. How we prepare is that, for example, as teachers, we must be now in a position to have prepared what is professionally required of us, plan how we shall teach and what we should teach according to the ministry guidelines and to the curriculum that is always placed on our tables. And as schools prepare, we have to remember that to welcome students, there is always a lot of things that should be in place. For example, most of the environments in schools might be bushy, grasses have grown, so we have to prepare, make sure that the sanitation is very clean in place, and we are able to receive students. Just like we want to go to the topic and discuss about boarding schools, we must make sure that there are safety precautions that are in place that students should come and find when they are kind of protected and they can feel at home while at school. So as schools and the stakeholders who are on ground in schools like teachers, head teachers, and other members, I think most of them are prepared to receive students. And now the question goes back to the community around our catchment areas where we get students from, because I'm very sure that Mr. Stuart, Miss Massey, and some other, very many Ugandans there have the same view about education, of saying that students can go where they afford. And like he said, most people must be in panic now to try to bring back students back to school, of course, with all the costs that it comes with. So as schools, the major part for us to prepare is to make sure that we are ready to teach the students that will report to school. Now, the shift of the responsibility and of the preparation part goes back to the parents and the students themselves who are readying themselves to come back to school and study. So on our part as schools and as a teacher, I think we are doing enough preparing schools, cleaning around, making sure that safety precautions for boarding sections and for all students are in place, and making sure that as also teachers who are supposed to receive these students, matrons, nurses, are also reporting back to their workplaces and workstations so that we can smoothly receive these students. Now, the question of what happens the catchment gives customers is panic because of the economic situation that we are all aware of. But I think as educationists and institutions, we are also sure of where these students that we are going to receive are coming from. And therefore, I think, and I want to say that the institutions and school heads should be lenient about students, especially about requirements and school fees, so that parents can strive to maybe bring what is enough and necessary to run schools in the meantime, and can all have to go back to school. Because, for example, in the context of where I work from, education is a right. And it is not just a right, but being in school, we refer to the school as a protection center. We think that students must be in school so as to be protected from a lot of. And so we close the doors to the protection center, then it becomes very unfortunate for such kind of students. But otherwise, as schools and as teachers, we are prepared to receive students on Monday and make sure that we effectively perform our professional duties as required of us. And we also pray and hope that the parents and the stakeholders that bring children to school are also in position and can get the means to afford how their children can actually come back to school and do the learning which is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oscar, for that submission. And you mentioned key issues there, including the safety of students, but also the ability of parents to fend and pay the school dues to make sure their children, their pupils are able to enroll at the different institutions. I have John Nkore here. John, greetings. You can hear me?
Greetings. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. How are you, sir? We're happy to have you. I want to pick your thoughts on this whole debate of pupils, students going back to school, and how are you seeing the situation in your particular location?
Well, I'm a school-going student. I'm just wondering to what direction are we having in the conversation? If it's finances, I think that's parents are preparing, and we are very excited for the new year term. If it is the students, the other day I saw a tweet how the students are doing their last checks on their homework, see that as they go back to school, they have their holiday work sorted. The schools that have holiday work, the schools that have beginning of term examinations, and I know that students are now catching up really. December holiday is long. What happens is the students never read in this holiday. So these last weeks toward school is when the students actually remember, hey, we actually have books. And the parents actually encourage, just check through them because they have beginning of term. And so, as a university student, I am a university student. We are already in school. This is week 2 of the of university semester. Semester has started, so we are excited. I don't think that there's a major hindrance for people, students going back to school, if it is not finances, because in any case, schools are open, parents are more than willing. We are not in economies where you would rather go and dig than go to school. I think that school education penetration is wide. So really the encouragement is that if there's a hindrance for people, and I think that's what we are encouraging everyone to do, save as much in the holiday so that when the child is going back to school, you do not struggle with the payment of the tuition. My thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, John Corey, for that submission, and we're happy to have you in the conversation. I want to come back to you, Mr. Mugabe. Look, our point of focus today is boarding section, and we know the president is saying for universal primary education, universal secondary education, stop mixing things. We put up those institutions for learners to go and study, not to eat, not to sleep. So certainly do away with boarding section. Talk to us as a parent and as a teacher. What is the significance of boarding section in schools, and what do we look at losing if this directive is put into effect? Yes, Mr. Mugabe.
Thank you, Philip. I actually put my hand up because I was I was happy to hear Oscar talking of teachers preparing. Yes, teachers are preparing, and then cleaning and clearing of schools. And he even mentioned something which actually made me begin asking myself which type of school he's in. No wonder he talked about American support. It must be a very well-funded school, whereby you talked of education being a right. But when you go to our typical schools, and we are talking about USE and UPE schools, really, we are even depending, we are waiting for these kids to come from school, from holidays, to begin clearing and cleaning the premises. And you see, capitation grant itself, it comes a bit late. Teachers are now waiting to buy Manila cards, to buy other instructional materials from the money which may even come after weeks. So they begin from scratch. Real typical USE and UPE schools are struggling. And to me, anyway, let me go to what you have asked me about the boarding section. First of all, I think we are putting a ban. There's a presidential ban on boarding section. But I want to ask you, Philip, who put those boarding schools, boarding facilities in those schools? That's why I began by telling you that education is just a matter of, it is managed. The government has lost touch and hand of education. Parents sit down and they begin planning on how their kids will eat in a boarding section, on how they want to put up a boarding section in a USE school. And sometimes the government has no hand in doing this. Who established this boarding section we are banning in these schools? It was done by parents after seeing that the boarding facilities are going to help them. Our parents are very busy. Look at the distance they are walking from school to home, and look at the challenges these kids meet along the way. There are very many challenges. A child who is a day scholar is a disadvantaged child. You are going to find these young girls and teenagers are going to meet border cyclists. They are going to meet rapists. They are going to meet people who are going to lure them into other activities. So if a parent is able to pay some little extra fees to keep the child in a boarding section, it is very good for the parent. And I think, to me, the ban is almost a politicized something. Okay? Maybe we are going for elections now, and it looks a bit as if we are trying to care for these parents. We are trying to feel the burden they are going through. But mind you, boarding sections in UPE schools, in USE schools are basically established by parents themselves. So they determine how much they are going to pay in their meetings. They determine how they want their children to be looked after. So I think it is going to be a very big challenge. First of all, actually, one time I was being addressed by, we were in a workshop, and I wonder whether I still is it the principal of Nakawa, this moves, Professor Barunywa. He said there is no policy in Uganda. We are talking about this ban. Who is going to implement this ban? Who is going to supervise these schools to make sure this ban is even implemented? Parents are now going to begin establishing residential places near those schools, and we are going to have hostels. We are in a liberal economy. We're in a liberal economy, acted as the residential areas for parents who could not fit in the school, but they would pay some little amount of money to keep the child near the school. These are hostels. It is business, and you can't stop them. So we are going to see the mushrooming of hostel areas. What I would think the government would see on how to improve on the facilities of these boarding sections in these schools and make them better. Otherwise, it helps the parent to keep this child in a boarding school, because look at our homes. We don't have maids and nowhere to be seen. Parents are running up and down, and it is basically safer and more cost effective to keep a child in a school boarding section rather than keep on rotating between school and home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mugabe, for that. And it's quite important you raise some of these. Let me bring in Masa at this point. Masa, do you have a boarding section at Batiiru Comprehensive School, and how is it managed? And in any case, are you planning to scrap that section that, since the president says it should not be there? Yes, Masa.
All right. So I'm saying that here at Batiiru Christian Secondary School, we have a boarding section, and really, the parents have really benefited and appreciated the initiation of the boarding, especially when it comes to candidates. It is like here in Batiiru, it is a mandate for all candidates to be in the boarding section. How important is it? One, it boosts coverage, especially now when it comes to this new curriculum. New curriculum is somehow wide, and I've tried to share with most of my colleagues from other schools, and they tend to say that they really find it hard to finish a syllabus. So if at all you try, the learners are in boarding section now, like here. Our learners are able to study on weekends. They are able to study for reps, and that one helps coverage. It also helps learners for consultation, both senior and 6. Similarly, this boarding section, because for our learners, we find that learners come from places like Bale, places like Soroti, Lira, but they really want to be part of secondary school. So what happens? A parent will feel more comfortable if the school has a boarding section. Why? Because of the quality of the school is having good quality education, but the distance from home to the school is somehow far, maybe in another district. So this boarding section really helps learners to access the desired education comfortably. And it also helps in such a way that, if at all they try like to scrap this boarding section issue, there are a lot of challenges, just like Mr. Stuart said it, especially to our girl child. A child they are easily manipulated alongside the way. Other children stay with the, let's say, parents, children, they act like co-parents. I hope you know that. So a child will come from home very stressed, very tired, cannot even concentrate. But once this child is at school and in boarding section, child is able to concentrate somehow and maybe forget some problems from home. Some homes, they can miss supper, they can miss breakfast, but here at school, they will have to eat break, they will have to eat lunch, they will have to eat supper. The electricity is there, water is there. So I really feel that parents have appreciated the boarding section, the boarding section, maybe especially for UZ schools. It is not good at all. Really, it's not good at all. Because now, just like Mr. Stuart said, it's going to bring in issues of renting. A parent wants to be near. So we all know the challenges of it. Your rent might lack some necessities. You're having fly, don't have cooking oil. You're coming back from school, you're very tired. You don't have time to cook. Also, a child might be tempted to bring in some other people, like maybe boyfriends, girlfriends, which can really interfere with their past. So for us here in Batiiru Christian, we are so happy with the boarding section, and they really even not only for candidates but right away from senior ones. And really, I buy the idea as a teacher and as a parent that it is really important for boarding section to continue.
Thank you, Mercy, for that. And that voice is very well captured on behalf of Batiiru Christian Comprehensive School. You are in for boarding section and you want it to stay and continue being run at that particular.
Oh, yeah. So the boarding section here, like I say, is run by parents. It should be closer to school than it would be if they were moving and commuting back home. So to have it in place, first of all, even in UCE schools and UPE schools, it is always at the parents' initiative after looking at the hassle that the students go through to get to school and come back. Now, if we take a look at the possibility of this happening, like the ban being put in place and how it affects students, my major point is on the distance that is trekked by these learners. We have very many places where the schools are very far from learners, and for a child to walk some good kilometers to school and come back in the evening, that basically means it is tiring physically. And as teachers, we know that you cannot teach a physically tired person. In other words, a healthy mind lives in a body which is physically fit and fine. So a person wakes up at 5 a.m. and has to take on or to cycle or to walk to school, and you expect them to be at school at 8 and then to teach them, that would be something which is very tiring. And I don't think that even their concentration at school during the school time would be efficient and effective enough to enable us, the teachers, do the teaching. In Uganda, I was looking at the secondary schools that are funded by the government. In 2019, the ministry had a list of 1,033 schools in the whole of Uganda, which were government aided and funded by the government. The policy in the Uganda's government is that each sub-county should have a secondary school that is government aided. We have, according to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, about 2,197 sub-counties, and the ministry just lists 1,033 secondary schools which are government aided, meaning that we have a deficit of about 900 sub-counties that do not have secondary schools. Now imagine a student who has to cross a sub-county to another, or even two, so that they can access education, and the kind of the physical torture that we put these students through and expect them to have educational outcomes at the end of the day. So my idea about these boarding sections is that these boarding sections are there as an initiative of parents, and parents should manage and know how and when they need them or when they don't need them. For example, we have options. I don't think there is a school which is most schools actually do not limit that people should only day school or should be boarders. There are options where people could be boarders and where people could be day scholars. I think that would be the better way to approach this. If parents could not actually afford taking their children in boarding sections, then, and they are in a distance which is physically near, they are near to the school, then these students could commute to school. But you can tell a student to commute for about 2 kilometers to school and then come back in the evening, and you expect them to concentrate and do the research, like for the case of the new curriculum, and get the skills that you require and the competencies. That would be something that is highly mythical and something that cannot work in the 21st century dynamics, where there is a lot more to education than what we plainly look at, because we have to teach these people to acquire skills. For example, when classes end at around 3 in the new curriculum, students go for skills training, and this is a person who is preparing to move home. Such times are the times we would want, such that these students can get these skills, they can get to research, they can get to build their social capital with friends. They can interact with friends and develop life skills other than coming to school and then leaving on the way, before you meet even the problems that Mase was talking about that these students could meet on the way. So I think before we think of making schools on red day, then we should first think of making sure that the access to education is enough. We have enough secondary schools, we have enough primary schools that are nearby to the parents and to the students, so that students can ably walk and get to the secondary schools. But otherwise, for example, for me where I am, we are not happy, or we would not be happy if the boarding sections are banned, because that will limit access to education from most students, because the secondary schools, the primary schools are very far from homes of these students. And besides, there are still options that people could move or could board. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mugabe, how about the concerns initially raised by the Honorable Joseph Gonzaga Sewunga and taken up by the President, that we have parents out there whose children cannot go to these schools just because of these new facilities in boarding sections? School fees is high and they are unable to access these schools, yet it is their interest to have their children in these schools. How do you merge the two, allowing parents and teachers to do what they desire and they think is best for the students they have, but also having parents and learners who cannot access this school because of this extra cost? How do we merge the two?
Thank you very much, Philip. And I think you have heard about from Oscar giving a very, very elaborate explanation. I will go back to the cost of education. The cost is high. And mind you, Philip, for your own information, when we are growing up, for us, we knew that in primary, that was where we had day schools. I had never heard when I was growing up that there's a secondary school which was even day. First, when we were growing up, all secondary schools were basically boarding. And I think there was a reason for that. Affordability. And I want to go back to my initial submission. Who began these boarding schools, boarding section in these schools? You go to the categorization of our schools. If you go and Google and see, you are going to find there's the way they categorize these schools: government aided, day and boarding. Meaning that those people around that, in the vicinity of that school, they can be able to come and study as day scholars. And those who are coming from far and they want to join that particular school should come for boarding. So the moment you ban boarding, what about these kids who are coming from very, very far? You have denied them the right to study from that particular school. And I told you, people are going to schools because of a particular reason. I think you are aware, you may be aware that I have worked in a third world school. I've worked in a good school, and my children have gone to good schools. If you give my daughter was at Gayaza High School. My son was at King's College Ubudo before he joined international school. But the dynamics in those schools are very different. One time we in a PTA school at Gayaza High School, and there was this parent, actually my daughter was now in senior 2, who was coming from deep in Shema, and the child had got 4. Now she had come and joined Gayaza High School, and now Gayaza High School PTA AGM is always around April, and he was asking, now when we are coming here, Madam Headmistress, we paid all the school fees, but now is there a possibility of me paying half? And the whole congregation laughed. You get it? There is nothing like paying half. There is nothing like paying in bits at Gayaza High School. There are no school fees challenges at Gayaza High School. You get it? That is a fully boarding school, no day scholar. Okay? So if you can't manage such a school, then you go to a school that you can manage. But basically, you have asked the issue of affordability. Even we have people like, for example, I want to go back to this school like now Gayaza High School. Do you think people around Gayaza High School are able to go to Gayaza High School because it is near them? It's impossible. That's why we are categorizing, and we need to appreciate that our schools are still categorized. Why are we having USE schools and non-USE schools? Who qualifies for non-USE and who qualifies for USE? Oscar talked about education being the right. A right to who? To a child coming from a poor family or to a child coming from a well-to-do family. Okay? So that's why you are going to find people will go to schools they can manage because of resources. A child will get 4 aggregate and he will be given a vacancy at SMAC, at Chisubi. Maybe they are paying 2.5 million. He will not go there. He remain in Kangurumira Secondary School, which is a USE school in his vicinity. You get it? So we have made education a business in Uganda, and we must appreciate that that's what takes place. When you go to our neighboring countries, Philip, I was in Kenya in 2009. For them, they categorize their schools: provincial schools, district schools, regional schools, and the composition of children that go to these schools when they go for selection. Today is a national selection for government institutions. Not every person is going to be selected in that particular school. Even if they select you, you can't even manage if you don't have the resources. You get it? Because they will tell you this is a non-USE school. They even call it non-use. This is a used school. This is So in Rwanda, when you go to Rwanda, they will tell you better quality education is got from government schools. If you want education which is not up to the standard, then you will go to non-government schools. And this has been intentionally done by government. I want us to encourage our government, to wake up and make education, and provide resources to these schools whereby children can freely go to these schools and get proper education. But ask the people who are even putting the ban and even enforcing the ban, where do their children go to school? Ask Sewungu, where does his child go to school? Is he going to Karungu Secondary School, which is near his home? You are going to find this child in an international school around Kampala. You are going to find his child is at SMAC. But then we talk of these poor people. To me, let us agree that boarding schools come with a cost. And parents even look at the school fees, by the way, you talked about the cost. We've been having a challenge, or even the government trying to regulate, and I think the government has even failed to regulate payment of school fees in government institutions. And mind you, we have what we call government-aided schools and community schools. Government has power over those community schools they can manage. But those government schools that are government-aided, they have no power. Parents will sit and pass a vote and go in and say, for us, we want our children to be eating meat every Sunday. And in the course of the week, we want them to have matoke and even, but in some schools, some kids are feeding on posho throughout from day one of the term after the last day of the term. And parents have nothing to do apart from feeding that way. So in those schools where feeding is much better, parents foot the bill. And the bill is decided by them, not the government. So the government comes on to just ban without going back. I wish the government could be called upon to provide, infrastructure for these boarding section facilities so that our children can be able to access education. And the last one, mind you, look at our communities. Why are people even going to these boarding sections? We are living in an era where we are having dysfunctional families. And you agree with me, there's too much single parenthood has come on the rise. And this man or this father or this mother is taking the child to a particular school because they have a strong pastoral care whereby this child is going to access maybe a father figure in a teacher, maybe a mother figure in a teacher. And this is a facility which is in a boarding school, which you can't get in a day school. And many parents are like that. And they're able to pay a lot of money for this particular activity. And you are going to find these children in boarding schools confiding in their teachers rather than confiding in their parents. Sure. So to me, boarding schools or boarding section is the way to go, unless otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you talk about the many things government has promised, including regulating school fees. There was a proposal by the First Lady to have all school-going children given milk every day and many other proposals. And we know that they have not succeeded until now. But looking around across the panel, it seems everyone agrees that boarding section is very important and we should keep it in our schools. I want to, as we get to the conclusion of our conversation, recommendations to government, to the ministry, to parliament, because these conversations are happening at all these levels. What recommendations, what advice would you give these people up there about this particular issue, and so that we can continue having a smooth, a progressive education system and indeed improve it, because there are concerns of quality and how things are running. I'll start with you, Marcel. What recommendations, advice do you have for the people that are making these decisions? Yes, Marcel.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Philip. I hope you are able to get me.
I can hear you.
Yeah, so actually, my recommendation to these people in power or above, I would like to recommend that before they make that decision of banning the boarding section, let them first, like the way we are trying to bring out our opinions and others, let them first consider the opinions of the people. Then, two, my advice is, according to Mr. Stuart, the boarding section is not imposed by force. It is actually brought out by the parents or suggested by the parents, because you can find there is a school which is entirely day school. Then there is a school which is purely boarding school. Then there is a school which is partly day, partly boarding. So parents have choice. What these people have to know is parents have choice. Let the parents rely on their choice according to their desires, according to their wish. If a parent feels that my child will be better and can afford the someone can afford the cost of 1 million, another can afford the cost of 10,000. So let them parents to decide. The parent can let a parent do what he or she can afford, not just imposing this thing on parents directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcel, for that advice, for that recommendation. And we know that your voice will surely be heard by one of the people that are key to making this decision. I'll go to Oscar. Oscar, I want to pick your recommendations, your advice to the people out there, and how best do we continue moving progressively? Yes, Oscar.
Thank you so much, Philip, for bringing me again in this conversation. So one time we were here on the community show and we were discussing fees regulation, and I hope you can see that even up to now, such kind of a policy has not worked. So when such policies fail, we start grappling with new policies which might also have to fail. The problem of the cost of education is not just arose by the fact that that schools have boarding sections. There are very many reasons as to why the cost of education is still rising. I was telling you on that show that the capitation grant that the government gives to schools cannot give them a chance as a government to actually regulate fees in those schools. Because if you can't give capitation grant that can cater for a child for a week in school, we can't expect you to come and put policies to follow where you don't provide enough. So in this case, the government, before thinking of saying students walk to school, let it first fulfill its pledge on having a secondary school in each sub-county and a primary school in each parish. You tell somebody's child to walk for 2 seconds, first make sure that these secondary schools that you promised to be there are there. Each and every day, we are creating more administrative units. As we create these administrative units, the public administration cost increases, but we don't see the access to the social services that are hinged on these promises of creating administrative units. If you say each sub-county should have a secondary school, how many sub-counties have? Even the secondary schools that are being built under the U-Gift project, they have not constructed in all the sub-counties that are around. Now imagine that students are told not to board and they have to access education, which I said is a right. Stuart said that the right is maybe on according to the social background, but universally all of us know that children, whether poor or rich, should access quality education. So before we start telling these students to walk to school, let us first make sure that the access to education is enough, so that when we say go to the schools near you, we don't mean that you walk for 2 sub-counties for about 1.8 kilometers that I saw in the reports, that the average daily walk is about 1.8 kilometers for Ugandan students. Let us first make sure that these pledges to have schools nearby are first fulfilled, and then people can go to where you're telling them to go. Then secondly, the reason as to why we are grappling with such policies is because we failed, because according to Honorable Sewungu's idea, the problem is with the cost of education. And the reason as to why we are failing to regulate the cost of education is because as government, it has failed to fund education or to make education its priority. Are we giving enough to these schools so that they run without charging extra fees to from the parents? If we are not giving enough, what are we putting in place to make sure that these schools receive what could help them run without adding an extra burden to the parent? So I think the ideas that these people should take are that in their budget framework of next year and the years to come, they should prioritize funding the government schools to make sure that they provide the quality of education which is accessible so that the policies they put in place can actually thrive. Otherwise, we shall keep grappling and coming from one policy to another and putting just talks instead of effective policies in that case, because the policies can work only if there are means by which they can work. You can't tell somebody's child to walk for 2 kilometers to access a UCE school just because you don't want boarding sections in schools, which is not actually the actual cause of the cost of the rise in the cost of schools. Then to parents, I would like to request that parents take it upon themselves that the matter of the situation of education in the country is still a shared responsibility. The government has not put in place what it is required to do to make sure that education is completely universal and free, just like they claim. So for that matter, we have to agree and appreciate the situation and the context where we are in and choose to take our students to the schools where we can afford. If a child can afford a boarding school, let them go there. If a parent can afford, let the child go there. If a child cannot, there are schools which are purely day. There are schools which offer both day and boarding services. Let the child go to a school where they can afford. But we should not have students who are all children who have an age of going to school, but they are actually stranded at home and not attending school at whatever cost. As we wait for maybe the government to fulfill on its pledges for making education accessible and also put an environment that makes their policies work. Otherwise, their policies will not work unless they work upon funding and making education a priority of the government.
Thank you so much, Oscar, for that recommendation, and I hope it is picked up elsewhere. Mr. Mugabe, your recommendation, advice, or piece of information you would want to go out there?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm reliably aware that the government was talking of rising cost of education and then the declining standards of buildings, which are in a solid state in these schools. And to me, I would like to encourage the government, first of all, to put up a commission of inquiry, not a commission of inquiry, a committee of eminent people who can find out why is there mushrooming? Why is there a need for boarding section in those youth schools? Okay, why are parents pushing for boarding facilities in those in those USE schools? And they will find out that boarding section is actually very better. It helps the parents. You have heard of the word in our language, packing food, that we can pack food for these kids when they are going to school. That is a lot of work and very, very tricky. In my language, we call it okukomentanda. You are komaring entanda every day for this child, and he eats the other mahoro every day. I wonder whether that one is actually very healthy. So one, we can put up a commission of eminent people to find out why parents are opting for boarding sections in those government USE schools. And again, as Oscar has said, the government should increase funding. Let them fund boarding sections in these schools and make education affordable. Since education is a social need, and it is a right of every individual, and we are trying to provide free education. Let us make boarding facilities affordable or given by government, and therefore parents are able to manage this education. And as Master said, we can also engage teachers and head teachers who are in education. These are ground workers, and we hear them, these stakeholders. We listen to the parent, we listen to the teacher, rather than a blanket ban of these boarding sections. Otherwise, as I told you, you are going to see the mushrooming, residential areas or hostels around these schools, because parents must take these children to school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mugabe Stuart, for those views and for making time for the conversation. Mr. Mugabe is a civil servant and an educationist. We're very honored and humbled to have you here today. Oscar Amanya, thank you so much for your time and for your views. We appreciate you, and you are a teacher and a youth leader. Nambuya Mase, a teacher at Batiiru Comprehensive Secondary School. We appreciate your views and the time you've made for the conversation. And to our viewers, thank you so much for keeping it Community Voices on Civic Space TV. And we continue to tell you that many more shows are flowing out there your way on Civic Space TV. Special thanks to the technical team and special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for making sure this is possible, plus all our partners. And we continue to say here at Civic Space that peace is very important for the world and for progress. We continue to say there should be peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The situation there is not good, and whoever can put a brick to make sure there is peace there, please do so. There is turmoil in Sudan. There is turmoil in Southern Sudan. Talk about Somalia and many other countries around us. We call for peace, and we hope it can be achieved as soon as possible. Thank you for joining us, and I shall see you next time.